Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something I've been enjoying, you never know, it could happen. Well, I have got my third installment of my top 100 science fiction books here today. We're talking 80 through 71. So stick with us. I did do any qualifications and all that for the list in the first video, starting with number 100. So please check there if you want to know where I'm coming from here. But anyway, let's jump into it. Number 80, we're going to go with Darth Plagueis by James Lucerno. This is a good one. I'm counting Star Wars as science fiction, okay? It's generally science fiction. It's got spaceships and generally a lot of things, even though I know it has space magic. So it's got fantasy and science fiction in it, I will admit that. But it's generally considered like not hard sci-fi, but sci-fi nonetheless, so I'm going with it. But Darth Plagueis is really good. It's just kind of casually mentioned, I guess maybe not, less than casually. It is mentioned in the first trilogy of Star Wars, well, I should say, in the prequel movies 1 through 3. And but this is a cool just study of a bad guy, of a bad guy's apprentice. And just all the lovely things that the Sith do, and so it's an interesting study in that, because part of it is just learning more about the Sith is pretty interesting. We honestly don't get a whole ton throughout the series, other than they use the dark side of the Force, and they have red lightsabers instead of blue or green or purple. And so anyway, but it's a good study. It's interesting, and it's entertaining too. All right, 79. We're gonna go with, well, the Sundiver series, the Uplift saga, I should say, by David Brin. Sundiver is fine, and then it's got a sequel that is really great, and actually it won the Hugo and the Nebula, so we got that. But it's a very interesting series. Some call it Dolphins in Space, which isn't inaccurate. Not Hitchhikers could do the same, right? They talk about dolphins leaving, but anyway, it's really an interesting concept. It's this interesting hierarchy in the galaxy of aliens, and making kind of already sentient species just to a more intelligent level, where they get to where they can create their own technology and think essentially as much as you can get like humans or above. So it's this interesting thing, and then humans have uplifted a couple of species like apes and dolphins, and so just dealing with that. This is kind of, Sundiver kind of introduces that whole concept, and it's pretty interesting, where if you are uplifted, then you in the galaxy are kind of considered a subservient kind of class or race. And what's cool about this is humanity has done a good thing here, and having learned from humanity's mistakes over the many years, with all the issues that we've caused with, slavery and terrible things, we actually did not make the dolphins or the apes subservient. So I think that's really cool. I think it's a good take on it, having learned something. And so anyway, it's cool. It's interesting. This is I could see why people like Startide Rising better, and actually you can start here. It barely references the first book in the series, frankly, and I guess the first book does introduce that concept a little better, so maybe that alone you should just read it in order, fine. And it's still good. But these are very just, again, that cool, here's a cool idea, let's explore it and get into it more. But this also is lots of adventure, lots of action going on too. Number 78, I've got Superposition. This is David Walton. Really interesting premise to a book, and there's actually a sequel too. But it's all about, as you can see here, that kind of idea of where, and it's been a while, so the science on it I'm probably pretty bad at. And this is actually my advanced reading copy from Pyre, so it's pretty cool. Essentially taking that idea of again, superposition of electrons, down to the molecular level, atomic level, and that some mimic others, and you can't the fact that it's a probability, right, as to where the electrons are, even though it's like it makes up matter, and you're like, how does that work where we don't know how it works really and understand it? But I think it's cool that the utilization of that kind of concept, really well done, put to good use, and really interesting in like a semi, like a realistic way. So it's kind of nuts. Then we got number 77. And again, I have a book for somehow I just got this actually. Liege Killer by Christopher Hitchens. This is a cool one. It's kind of like Star Wars, but we're not calling things Star Wars. But it's not like not the Zack Snyder cut either. This is cool. It's an interesting sci-fi concept. These Paratwa, these kind of like I've compared things to this before, and I think it's fine. I think I'll do it again. Equilibrium type gun katas kind of thing, but with their own like kind of lightsaber type thing that's not a lightsaber. Anyway, cool story. Nobody talks about this ever, but it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. All right, number 76, Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan. This is one, it's an entertaining story, it's fun, and it's interesting. It's an interesting future. It was just, I think, again, expectations may have gotten the best of me, but I just didn't think it was, like, Richard K. Morgan as an author kind of, I don't know, from what I've read, thinks much of himself, and kind of like has spoken not so kindly about some of my favorite books. And so that's where I already go, okay, well, if it's so good, then this should be like mind-blowing. And I thought it was fine, and it's good, and it, it's got that show, whatever. But and I do need to read some more Richard K. Morgan. I do have The Stealer Remains, so I'm excited for that. It's his fantasy series. Again, this was good, but I think I'm like, if you think you're like the god of writing, then it better be really good. And we got 75, The Hollow City by Dan Wells. This was an interesting one. It's really like you don't quite know what's going on. And again, it might be a stretch for science fiction, but I'm keeping it here. But it's like you're in an insane asylum, and so it's always a bit of an unreliable narrator no matter what. But you kind of believe him. But it's playing with that the whole time. But it's really cool. It's really well done, and it's really interesting. And Dan Wells, if you haven't read like his I Am Not a Serial Killer series, this is book 2 actually. But and he's Brandon Sanderson's right-hand man these days, always with Brandon Sanderson on the podcast and whatnot. But good writer, like really well done, and again, he's gonna handle the Cosmere pretty well, I think. But not that I want that, but I get it too. But anyway, The Hollow City. Our number 74, we're going with Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is a classic for sure, and it's kind of like the opposite 1984. I think 1984 better, which is why you haven't seen it yet. But it's kind of like 1984 is like the totalitarian government of the future is gonna big brother everyone and control everything, whereas Aldous Huxley's future is we gave you so much of what you wanted that you didn't care anymore, that you were suddenly not free or not able to do what you want. It's an interesting concept. It's well told and kind of just silly, I felt like a lot of the time. That's what it's going for. But anyway, definitely it's a classic. All right, 73, I'm going with The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. Again, one that might have been influenced by my expectations. I just heard this was like one of their favorite sci-fis of all time, and I really liked it, so don't get me wrong. It's higher than many books on this list. But it just, I guess I wanted just like, more action or something, and it was good, it was well told, and it's an interesting concept. But it wasn't what I expected either. So I had a lot of things going for it. I'm like, maybe I need a reread is what I'm saying. All right, 72, Dan Wells is making another appearance here. We're going with Partials. Again, maybe a stretch, but I don't think so. I think it's still in a science fiction, at least type category. It is young adult, which some like label as a genre for some reason. It can be kind of young adult and something, but anyway, who cares what we're naming things, right? I'm only doing a whole list based on science fiction. But anyway, Dan Wells, again, well done, good, just a good author. He tells a good tale. This is one of those, I think, as I understand it, that he got the concept from someone else when they were just like, you want to be the one to write this? And he's a good author, so again, he's written in other worlds, which again is why I'm like, he's going to be good in the Cosmere. Of all the people, when I'd prefer Zero, if it has to be someone, Dan Wells is a good one. All right, then 71. This is one I kept trying to call Dan Wells' other book, The Hollow City. This one's The Hollow World. They happen to be in the same realm. It just kind of worked out on this list. Don't ask me why. I think I kind of like them similarly, though. That's why. Hollow World by Michael J. Sullivan. Not the one that people talk about, right? If anyone talks about anything, it's his, well, this is book one of The Theft of Swords, The Crown Conspiracy, the self-published version. But I love me some Michael J. Sullivan, and this is one that really takes this cool, interesting take on time travel into the future. It's kind of, I like the approach he took at the beginning that was like, don't try to think through like how the time travel took place, okay? That's not what we're getting at. It is like this future world that we're exploring, which does have futuristic technology, is science fiction. And so I think it's cool. It's a really interesting kind of look at the future. Is it where we're headed? Who knows? But I thought it was really a fun take on that concept. And that's my list of 80 through 71. So hopefully you're still trucking along there with me. We will have another one next week. Sometimes I throw in two if I'm on vacation. I did shoot these ahead of time. So anyway, let me know which one you're curious about. Let me know if you've read any of these. So we'll catch you next time. Bye.